What is going on, knife nerds? So today we have got my Millit Torrent V2. Now, this is a knife that I picked up on the secondary market probably 6 weeks back or so. The knife was kind of looking rough, but the price was really awesome and I wanted to do some mod work on it, so I snagged it up. So let me roll in a picture of what it looked like before the mod work. And so what I did was, well, first I should say the original finish was removed and replaced by this black nano ceramic coating that was done by Mike Imler. And so both scales were totally black with this pretty sweet nano ceramic coating. Now, I'm not a big fan of spray coatings, but this one seems to be pretty darn tough. So it's okay, and I didn't really hate it that much, but I did want some more color to pop on this knife. So what I did was I took and removed only the front portion of the nano ceramic coating. I sanded that off and gave it a beautiful satin finish, and then anodized it with this sexy blue here. And then the next thing that I did was I replaced all the hardware. It had all black stainless steel screws previously. The screws were pretty rough. You know, this is a 2018 knife, and so, you know, it's been carried, it had been used, and the screws were, a lot of the black was flaking off of them. The pivot was a little bit rough looking. And so what I did was I got titanium hardware from Tie Connector, and all the hardware had to be fitted to the knife. So I had to cut and size all of the titanium body screws, which there were several of them. You know, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screws that I had to cut down to size to fit this knife, because the screws are all different sizes. No, they're not equal lengths. And so each one had to be sized correctly. And then the pivot on this, I actually had to turn this pivot to get it to fit flush into this counter bore here. So the pivot from Tie Connector, they do 5/16 or 3/8. The counter bore here was bigger than 5/16, but smaller than 3/8. So I had to get the 3/8 pivot and then turn it down to fit into this counter bore flush. And it came out pretty clean. Very pleased with the result there. Nice fit. Pivot looks sick on here. And then I anodized all the hardware blue. The other thing I did was I put skiff bearings in here. The original bearings were stainless steel, and one of the races was a little bit damaged and it had 2 balls missing out of it. So I went ahead and replaced this with the 3/16 inch ceramic skiff bearings, and that was a pretty big upgrade there. And then of course, yeah, just the beautiful blue anodizing, and I kind of like how the anodizing is shadow boxed all the way around the scale. So you get that little pop of blue all the way around the scale and around the carbon fiber there. Now on this knife, it was originally an acid etched stone washed blade. That it was like that from the factory. That was not altered. And so I didn't think that looked too good on this knife, because this knife is kind of fancy looking. And then it just had this really kind of plain Jane satin stonewash on it. So as you can see here on the original certificate of authenticity, it's XHP steel and acid etched stonewash blade. And the original color of the handles was purple anodizing. And then it had the carbon fiber overlay and black screws. This was made in 2018. And here is the original box, which is kind of a plain Jane cardboard box with a made in the USA sticker there. And then it does have a nice foam insert inside. This is the original pivot that I decided to hang on to because there was nothing wrong with it except that it was a little bit worn. And so yeah, that's the original box. It is a 3 1/4 inch blade. This is a Millit Torrent V2, and they are on V3. Was the last batch. I don't know if they're going to move to V4 on the next batch or if it's just going to be more V3s. But so yeah, this one, this is a pretty epic little knife, honestly. I think these retailed for about $450 back in the day. This size, I mean, they had so many different variations. You could get, you know, Damasteel and then Damasteel overlays and all kinds of crazy stuff. And they went, you know, they went as high as up as like $1,100-$1,200 for the full dress ones. But this was an entry level one, and you know, like I say, it was around the $400 maybe $500 price tag range, somewhere around there. So I blasted the blade, got rid of that stonewash, and then the original clip was just a light blue anodizing, and it didn't match anything else on the knife, and so I blasted the clip to match the blade. And interestingly enough, if you notice, the cutout on the clip is this exact same shape as the cutout on the blade. So I thought that was pretty cool, interesting little thing that they did there. But yeah, this nano ceramic coating here that Mike Imler did is pretty good. I initially I was gonna remove it and anodize the whole frame, but I decided it was more trouble than it was worth because I would have to blast it, and then I wouldn't be able to finish down in these cutouts. So it would have dull anodizing down in the cutouts if I just blasted it. So I didn't want to do that. So I left the nano ceramic coating on the frame and left it on the whole back side of the front scale. And then I was able to just sand that front area flat so that I could get my pop of color that I wanted. And as you can see, it looks super epic with that blue anodizing popping out from behind that carbon fiber. Yeah, dig it all day long. This is a 3 1/4 inch blade, so not a big knife, and the handle is not much longer than the blade either. So overall length here is not super long. I don't have the specs in front of me because they don't have this live on their website right now, so there's no specs listed anywhere. But yeah, so on the action on this knife, this has actually an interesting feature. The lock bar insert, there is a stainless steel lock bar insert here, and the lock bar insert is adjustable. So these two screws, you can kind of see that the holes that they're sitting in are a little bit egg shaped, a little bit oval shaped, and you can actually take and move the whole lock bar insert back and forth, which is interesting. I don't really know why, but it's there. I guess they were thinking about lock bar insert wear, maybe. I don't really know. It was a little bit fiddly to dial in. It took me quite a while to get it where I wanted it. This is where the lockup ended up at, and it's pretty good. When I got the knife, like I say, it was not in super good shape. It wasn't terrible, but there were things. Like when I first opened it, there was just complete lock rock. And I knew that the lock bar insert was adjustable before I bought it. But the guy that sold me the knife did not know that the lock bar insert was adjustable, and he failed to mention that there was lock rock on the knife. So, you know, it's one of those things where I got a good enough deal on it where I'm not going to complain because I was able to solve the problem myself, but it showed pretty clear intent that he, you know, didn't disclose that was a problem. You know, if he had said, hey man, there's a little lock rock, I would have been like, okay, cool, dude, thanks for mentioning that. But he didn't mention it. And, you know, it's just stuff like that that's like, dude, if you're going to sell a knife and you're not a scammer and you're going to send the knife, just tell people what's up with it. Because in the long run, you know, it's better for your reputation in the community. And, You know, the guy you're buying from is going to respect you. You don't know, you might want to buy a knife from him someday, and you would want him to do the same thing, right? You would want him to tell you if there was an issue with the knife. So, you know, let's just be respectful, guys. You know, if there's a little issue with the knife, it may not kill your cell. Just tell them about it, because that's a shitty thing to do. Luckily, the lock bar insert was adjustable, so there's no more lock rock on this knife. And I asked the guy afterwards, I was like, hey dude, did you know that this lock bar insert was adjustable? And he was like, no, I had no idea. He's like, okay, well, now you know, buddy. Anyhow, yeah, so back to the knife. 3 1/4 inch blade, and it is hollow ground. In terms of knife production, 2018 is eons ago. I mean, you know, in the past 3-ish years, we have just, there's been so many more advances in knife making, but in 2018, it was relatively new thing that Millit Knives was doing, which was CNC hollow grinding. And so this is hollow ground, but it was done on a CNC machine, not on a belt grinder like most typical hollow grinds are done. Somebody's basing outside my house here. I hope y'all can't hear that. Anyways, so it's not a super deep hollow grind. This is not horribly thick behind the edge, but it's also not super slicey behind the edge, so you get a slightly wide, you know, bevel on the sharpening there to get it good and slicey, and it's stupid sharp right now. Since I sharpen on a wicked edge, here's another thing about this knife. It is super thick at the tip here. So they've got this really robust tip, like the full thickness of the blade stock goes all the way up to here, and then it just drops down. So because of that, the steel is getting thicker out here towards the tip, the way that they did the hollow grind. So when you sharpen it on a jig and you have your constant angle on your jig, the bevel gets a little bit slightly fatter out here at the tip, and you know, that might bother some people. It's not too bad on this knife, but it's definitely there. And yeah, see if I can, yeah, you can't really tell on the camera here, I don't think. But anyways, point being, it's the way that they did this grind was, it's okay. It's not, let's just say it's not phenomenal. Now, I do believe that they actually did make them more, the hollow grind is deeper on the V3s. That's what I heard. So they might be a little bit more slicey after the V2 version. And man, you know, when they do another batch, I might want to pick another one of these up, one of the newer versions, and see what's up, because I really like this knife. Now, the action. So this is a surprisingly good action for such a small knife. I mean, it's not a terribly small knife. It's 3 1/4 inch blade, but the handle is not much bigger than the blade. So, you know, you're talking under 7 inches overall length here, and it fits exactly in my hand. Like, I get exactly 4 fingers on it with like no room to spare, and it feels really good. The ergonomics are phenomenal. The jimping here, see if I can get a close-up on that. The jimping is phenomenal. I love the way they did this, where it's just like little, you know, it's just little grid pattern jimping, and it feels so good. It's got great traction. It digs in, but it's not sharp. Perfect, absolutely perfect jimping. And then you kind of have this little interesting, very deeply ground groove that runs all the way down the blade there. So there's a little bit more mill work there, and we've got a stepped milling inside the eyelet here. And then let's see if we can get a little bit better on that sick blue anodizing. The back spacer is carbon fiber, the same carbon fiber that is used on the scale. And then yeah, so this pocket clip is very exceptional. As you can see, it's a pretty thin milled pocket clip. One thing about milled clips, a lot of people do them just a little too thick and they get really stiff and they're kind of a pain in the ass to get in your pocket. This one is not like that. This is super springy, and it doesn't have a bent lip, so it's not going to snag on things either. And it's just high enough to get onto, you know, even thick pocket jeans. It goes on no problem, but it's not too tall. I mean, they just absolutely nailed this clip. It's perfect. And interestingly enough, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the cutout shape here on the pocket clip matches the blade cutout exactly. They're both the same shape, so that was some interesting forethought there. And yeah. Now the action on this knife. Now it was riding on stainless bearings, and one of the bearings was damaged and it was missing 2 balls, so I put skiffs in it, and it did not make a big difference as far as the action. But what I mean, I'm here to tell you, this lock bar is really dialed in. It's just, you know, for a 3¼ inch knife, it is an absolute guillotine. It just drops shut, and it's beautiful. It's smooth drop shutty. In fact, this knife reminds me of the Shirogorov Hation Zero that I had just a few months back. It's a little bit slimmer through the handle area than the Hation was, but it just the way the action feels and the build quality of it, this is very much like a Hation Zero. And so that says a lot about the quality that's going on here. Yeah. Yeah, man. Other than that, yeah, I fully dig this knife. There is no internal milling inside the handles because you've got the mill pattern here on that, and then the front is carbon fiber, you know, overlaid, so that's super light. It's a, you know, it's light, but it's not an ultra light knife. Like, it doesn't feel dainty. It has enough weight to feel good for its size, you know what I mean, but not heavy at all. And yeah, phenomenal action. Oh, the Spidey flick, like a dream. Yep, Spidey flick all day long with this knife. It's very fidgety, and flipper action is very good as well. And it has a nice kind of thwack to it. It is an internal, it does have internal stop pins. And so, you know, you can kind of see there is no stop pin there. The stop pins are internal. And it has a nice sound on the lockup. Let me see if I can capture this. So, yeah, I really dig the sounds here. I dig the action. I dig the build quality. The shape, the look, the ergos. Not a lot to complain about here with this knife. You know, a little thick out here at the tip, no big deal. I guess that means you won't break the tip off likely. So some people might see that as a pro if they wanted to treat this as a hard use knife, which it's not. It's a smaller, lightweight EDC knife. But you could definitely get some work done with this puppy, especially with that good jimping and these good ergos. And yeah, that's the Millit Torrent V2, an older knife that I was pretty lucky to score on the aftermarket and get some sweet mod work done on it. And I got some more stuff headed your way, and so tune in later.